The world's most famous ancient sites share a secret language. From the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of Cambodia, stone monuments across continents whisper of a hidden blueprint, a pattern of design that defies the story of isolated human history. By the end of this journey, you will see the ancient world not as a collection of separate cultures, but as a potential network of shared knowledge and cosmic understanding. Why would builders separated by thousands of miles and years use the same sacred geometry? Could a forgotten cataclysm have united their efforts? We are about to decode a mystery written in alignment and stone, one that challenges everything we think we know about our past. What does it mean to discover that our ancestors might have been far more connected than we ever imagined? A map of our planet, from the dry sands of Giza to the dense jungles of Mesoamerica, reveals a scattered gallery of stone giants. These monuments stand as silent, enduring questions. The pyramids of Egypt, the massive platform of Baalbek in Lebanon, the intricate temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and the precisely carved walls of Cusco in Peru, they seem to speak in a visual dialect we have only begun to decipher. This is the foundation of our mystery, the suggestion of a hidden blueprint. It is not a literal set of architectural plans passed from hand to hand, but a recurring pattern of principles, a shared language of numbers, angles, and alignments etched into the earth itself. At its heart are concepts like sacred geometry, the idea that certain shapes and ratios carry profound meaning, reflecting the order of the cosmos. One fascinating example is the megalithic yard, a unit of measurement close to 2.72 feet that researchers have proposed appears in stone circles across Britain, and even in structures much farther afield. Why would cultures with no known contact use the same building block? Then there are the mathematical constants like pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, seemingly encoded in the dimensions of the Great Pyramid. And above all, there is the sky, the consistent alignment of these sites to specific stars, solstice sunrises, or celestial events. The significance of this pattern is staggering. If these similarities are merely coincidence, it is a coincidence on a global scale, repeated across centuries. The alternative compels us to reconsider a fundamental story, the one where ancient civilizations developed in splendid isolation. This hidden blueprint whispers of connections we have yet to fully map, of knowledge that may have flowed across oceans we thought were uncrossable, or perhaps of a deeper, shared human intuition about the mathematics of the universe itself. It is an invitation to look closer, to measure not just the stones but the spaces between them, and to ask what story those spaces are trying to tell. The blueprint's first and most visible layer is written in the sky. Long before the invention of the telescope, cultures separated by vast distances were constructing stone calendars of breathtaking precision. These were not just places of gathering, but instruments of observation, engineered to capture the precise moment a star appeared in a narrow window, or the exact spot the sun rose on the longest day of the year. This shared celestial focus forms a powerful pillar of our hidden blueprint. Consider Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain of England. Its massive sarsen stones are arranged so that on the summer solstice, the rising sun aligns perfectly over the outlying heel stone, casting a beam of light deep into the heart of the circle. This was not an accident, but a deliberate act of engineering that required generations of knowledge. Now, travel thousands of miles to the Sun Temple of Konark in India. Shaped like a colossal chariot for the sun god, its entire design is a complex astronomical device. Specific carvings and architectural features are positioned to mark the equinoxes, with shadows and light playing across the structure in a meticulously choreographed annual dance. Then cross the Atlantic to the Mayan pyramid of El Castillo at Chichen Itza in Mexico. Here, the genius manifests during the spring and autumn equinoxes. The setting sun casts a shadow along the northern staircase, creating the undulating illusion of a serpent slithering down from the temple summit to earth, a phenomenon that draws crowds to this day. Archaeoastronomers, scientists like Clive Ruggles who study how ancient peoples understood the sky, emphasize the sophistication behind these alignments. They were not merely symbolic but functional, serving as agricultural calendars to plant and harvest, and as ritual anchors to celebrate the cyclical rebirth of the sun or moon. The fact that cultures from the moors of England to the plains of India to the jungles of the Yucatan all invested immense labor to achieve this celestial synchrony points to a universal human imperative. It was a drive to measure time, to predict the seasons, and to align human life with the grand, predictable rhythms of the cosmos. This shared language of alignment suggests that if there was a hidden blueprint, its first chapter was authored by the stars themselves, read by priest astronomers across the globe who looked up and asked the same fundamental questions about their place in the universe. But the blueprint is not written only in the stars. There is a second layer of alignment, one that shifts our gaze from the heavens down to the very soil beneath our feet. This is the controversial and captivating idea of earth energies and ley lines, a hypothesis that ancient monuments might be connected by invisible threads of power or purpose, forming a vast grid across the landscape. The concept was first popularized in the 1920s by an English antiquarian named Alfred Watkins. While surveying the countryside, he had a sudden vision of ancient trackways, straight lines connecting hilltops, old churches, springs, and standing stones across Britain. He called these alignments ley lines, suggesting they were old trade or pilgrimage routes marked by sacred sites. This was a geographical observation, a pattern on a map. But in the decades since, the idea has been reinterpreted through a more mystical lens. Many now propose these lines represent channels of telluric currents, subtle earth energies or magnetic forces that ancient cultures could somehow sense and sought to tap into or honor. The most famous example is the St. Michael Line, an alleged ley line stretching across southern England. It is said to connect sites dedicated to the Archangel Michael, like St. Michael's Mount, Glastonbury Tor, and other ancient mounds and churches, all in a remarkably straight alignment. Proponents point to even grander intercontinental connections, such as the speculative alignment linking Stonehenge, Glastonbury Tor, and, astonishingly, the Great Pyramid of Giza. On a map, drawing a line between these points can create a compelling visual puzzle. The immediate and critical question is one of intent versus coincidence. Mainstream archaeology and geology are deeply skeptical of literal, measurable Earth energy lines. They argue that with thousands of ancient sites scattered across the globe, finding some that align by chance is statistically inevitable. They see ley lines as a form of pattern recognition, where we connect the dots our minds want to see. Yet, even when dismissing the supernatural, the geographical placement of these sites remains a profound puzzle. Why were these specific hills, these particular springs, chosen over others nearby? The theory, stripped of its esoteric elements, opens a door to a different kind of insight. It asks us to consider whether ancient builders possessed a deep, intuitive sensitivity to the landscape that we have lost. Were they attuned to subtle geophysical features like underground water flows, magnetic anomalies, or the acoustic properties of a place? Did they plan their sacred geography not just for celestial sightlines, but to create a resonant network across the Earth itself? This line of inquiry, while often on the fringe of science, points to a persistent human intuition that the world is alive with connections we can no longer easily perceive. Whether these connections are energetic, symbolic, or simply a testament to a shared human impulse to mark and connect significant places. The ley line hypothesis challenges us to look at the ancient world not as a collection of isolated points, but as a potential web, a conscious inscription upon the body of the planet. Beyond alignments to stars and Earth lies a deeper, more fundamental layer of the blueprint, one composed not of lines but of perfect shapes. This is the geometry of the gods, a silent vocabulary of circles, squares, pyramids, and spirals that repeats across the ancient world with a consistency that feels intentional. These forms were far more than aesthetic choices. They were sacred containers for meaning, each shape a key to understanding how these cultures perceived the structure of reality itself. Take the circle, perhaps the most universal of all. In the stone circles of Britain, like Avebury or the Callanish stones in Scotland, the circular enclosure creates a sacred space set apart from the ordinary world. It mirrors the cyclical nature of time, the path of the sun and moon, and the horizon itself. This same impulse manifests in the mandalas of Hindu and Buddhist tradition, intricate circular diagrams that represent the universe and serve as tools for meditation. The historian of religion Mircea Eliade spoke of this universal symbolism, noting how many cultures designate a sacred center, an axis mundi, a point where heaven and earth were believed to connect. This center, often marked by a stone, a temple, or a mountain, was the still point around which the chaos of the world was organized into a meaningful cosmos. The circle defines that sacred precinct. Then there is the pyramid, a shape that emerged independently in the deserts of Egypt and the rainforests of Mesoamerica. While their functions differed, tombs in one place, temples in another, the form itself is a powerful geometric statement. It is a mountain made by human hands, a stairway aiming for the heavens, its four sides often meticulously aligned with the cardinal directions, anchoring the structure to the fundamental order of the world. Its stability and ascent speak a language of permanence and spiritual aspiration understood across oceans. But the most compelling evidence for a shared geometric language comes from the numbers hidden within these shapes. Mathematical constants, those pure ratios that describe the relationships in nature, appear encoded in stone. The golden ratio, often represented by the Greek letter phi and roughly equal to 1.618, is a proportion considered aesthetically perfect and appears throughout nature, from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. This same ratio is found in the proportions of the Parthenon in Greece, governing the relationship between its various architectural elements to create a sense of harmonious beauty. Even more strikingly, the Great Pyramid of Giza incorporates both pi and phi in its fundamental dimensions. The ratio of its perimeter to its height is very close to 2 times pi, while the ratio of the length of its slanted side to half its base length approximates phi. The likelihood of these sophisticated mathematical relationships appearing by chance in a 4,500-year-old structure is vanishingly small. This recurring geometric vocabulary points to something profound. It suggests that these diverse cultures were not just copying shapes, they were independently discovering, or perhaps remembering, the fundamental mathematical and philosophical principles that underpin the cosmos. They saw geometry as a divine language, a way to make the invisible order of the universe visible and permanent in stone. When a priest in Cambodia laid out a temple mandala and an architect in Egypt calculated the slope of a pyramid, they may have been partaking in the same profound endeavor, attempting to build a little piece of cosmic order here on Earth using the same silent alphabet of form. The silent language of geometry requires a precise vocabulary, a system of measurement to translate cosmic principles into built form. This leads us to one of the most contentious and fascinating questions within our hidden blueprint, the possibility of a universal ancient ruler. Could builders separated by vast oceans have been using the same tape measure? the idea centers on a unit known as the megalithic yard, proposed in the mid-20th century by a Scottish engineer named Alexander Thom. After meticulously surveying hundreds of stone circles and megalithic sites across Britain and France, Thom became convinced their builders employed a standardized unit of length. He calculated this unit to be approximately 2.72 feet, or about 0.83 meters. The consistency he found was startling, with the diameters and perimeters of these ancient rings often appearing as neat multiples of this proposed yard. The implication was profound. It suggested a shared technical knowledge, a building code that spanned a wide geographical area in prehistoric Europe. But the speculation did not stop there. Enthusiasts of the theory began looking farther afield, drawing comparisons to other famous ancient measures. They pointed to the Egyptian royal cubit, the standard unit used to build the pyramids, which measures about 1.72 feet. Intriguingly, some researchers note that 1.5 megalithic yards is very close to the length of a royal cubit multiplied by the mathematical constant pi. Could this be a coincidence or a hint of a shared, more complex metrological system? The comparisons grow even more speculative when we look to the remote Pacific. Some analyses of the massive Moai statues on Easter Island suggest their dimensions might also be based on a unit similar to the megalithic yard, particularly in the spacing of the famous stone platforms called ahu. If true, it would suggest this measurement concept had traveled unimaginable distances. However, this is where we must engage with the fierce statistical and methodological debate that surrounds this idea. Mainstream archaeologists and statisticians have heavily criticized Thom's conclusions. They argue that with a large enough set of measurements from irregular stone structures, you can always find a common divisor that seems to fit, a phenomenon akin to seeing patterns in random noise. They question whether the builders intended such precise uniformity, or if we are imposing modern expectations of accuracy onto ancient monuments that were likely laid out with ropes, stakes, and perhaps a more flexible, ritualistic approach. The stones themselves are often irregular, and their placement may have shifted over millennia, making precise retroactive measurement an uncertain science. So where does this leave the megalithic yard? It remains a tantalizing, unproven piece of the puzzle. If it was a real, widely used unit, its origin story presents two captivating possibilities. The first is cultural diffusion, the slow spread of a practical idea from one master builder to another across trade routes or through shared ceremonial practices. The second possibility is even more intriguing: independent discovery. Perhaps this measurement was not invented, but derived from something universal, like the average stride of a human, the swing of a pendulum, or even a fraction of the Earth's dimensions. This idea of a natural, human-centered measure resonates with other ancient units like the foot or the cubit, which were often based on the human body. The debate over the megalithic yard ultimately pushes us to a deeper question, not just about numbers, but about the ancient mind. Did our ancestors seek to standardize their sacred spaces because they believed a perfect measure reflected a perfect cosmic order? Whether the unit was precisely 2.72 feet or not, the enduring search for it reveals our own deep intuition that behind the apparent chaos of the ancient world, there must have been a method, a shared logic written in the spaces between the stones. The ocean, vast and seemingly impassable, may have been the blueprint's greatest highway. While we trace lines across land and sky, a compelling hypothesis suggests the true connectors were not priests but sailors, navigating the world's waters long before recorded history. This idea of prehistoric maritime cultures challenges the very foundation of how we view ancient isolation. Could shared knowledge have sailed on the trade winds, carried by intrepid voyagers who mapped the currents and stars? The evidence, while often circumstantial and hotly debated, paints a picture of a world far more liquid than we once thought. Consider the sweet potato. This nutritious tuber is native to South America, yet for centuries before European contact, it was a staple crop across Polynesia from Hawaii to New Zealand. The Polynesian name for it, kumara, bears a striking resemblance to its Quechuan name from the Andes, kumar. This linguistic and botanical clue strongly implies that people traversed the immense Pacific, exchanging not just goods but the very seeds of their sustenance. Then there are the architectural echoes that tantalize researchers. The step pyramids of Mesoamerica, like those at Teotihuacan, share a visual kinship with the step pyramids of ancient Egypt, like the Pyramid of Giza. Both employ layered platforms leading to a summit. Both were centers of ritual and cosmic symbolism. Mainstream archaeology attributes this to independent invention, a logical architectural solution for building tall, stable structures from stone. But diffusionists ask, is the similarity in form profound enough to suggest a shared idea that traveled? To test the feasibility of such incredible journeys, modern adventurers turned to ancient methods. In 1947, the Kon-Tiki expedition, led by Thor Heyerdahl, demonstrated that a simple balsa wood raft, using only the Humboldt Current and the trade winds, could drift from South America to the Polynesian islands. This was not proof of contact, but a powerful demonstration of possibility. It showed that the ocean was not an absolute barrier, but a dynamic system that could be understood and utilized by skilled mariners. Scholars of ancient navigation point to the sophisticated wayfinding techniques of Polynesian cultures, who crossed thousands of miles of open ocean using only their deep knowledge of star paths, wave patterns, bird flight, and cloud formations. If they could achieve this, why not others? The argument against this maritime hypothesis, the case for independent invention, is equally strong. Human beings facing similar challenges and inspired by similar celestial wonders are perfectly capable of arriving at similar solutions. A pyramid is a stable way to build high, a circle is a natural shape for gathering, and aligning a temple to the solstice sun is a direct observation anyone can make. The psychological principle of convergence suggests that cultures under similar pressures will often develop parallel technologies and social structures. So, where does the truth lie? It likely exists in a nuanced middle ground. The oceans were probably both barrier and bridge. Some knowledge was undoubtedly invented and reinvented across the globe. Yet the persistent, specific similarities in crops, myths, and even artistic motifs hint that occasional, extraordinary contact did occur. A storm-blown vessel surviving a long drift, a planned voyage of exploration that found new shores, these events, while rare, could have been enough to transfer a powerful idea, a fragment of a blueprint that then took root in new soil and blossomed into a unique yet familiar form. This perspective does not diminish the genius of ancient cultures, but enriches it, suggesting a world where innovation could both spring from local genius and be whispered across the waves, creating a tapestry of human achievement more interconnected than our history books have yet dared to write. The ground beneath our feet is not as fixed as it seems. Our journey through alignments and geometry has assumed a stable world, but what if the stage itself has moved? This introduces a radical, temporal layer to our hidden blueprint, the possibility that a global cataclysm could have literally reoriented the planet, leaving ancient monuments pointing to a sky that no longer exists. We must carefully step into the realm of what is often called fringe science, where the work of a scholar named Charles Hapgood comes to the fore. In the mid-20th century, Hapgood, with support from none other than Albert Einstein, proposed the theory of Earth-Crust displacement. This was not a gradual continental drift, but a catastrophic, rapid shift of the entire outer shell of the planet over its molten core. In this scenario, the geographic poles could relocate, dragging continents into new climatic zones in a geological instant. Hapgood used evidence like frozen mammoths in Siberia and ancient maps seemingly depicting an ice-free Antarctica to argue his case. For our blueprint, the implication is staggering. If such an event occurred within human memory, then the perfect solstice alignment we measure at Stonehenge today might not be the one its builders intended. Their temple could have been aligned to a star that hung in a different part of the sky, or to a pole star we no longer recognize. This idea, often termed the polar configuration theory, suggests we are trying to read a celestial map with the wrong north. It forces a profound question: are we misinterpreting the monuments because the world they were built for has vanished? Mainstream geology acknowledges that the continents move and the magnetic poles wander and even reverse over vast eons, but it firmly rejects the idea of a sudden, recent crustal shift of the scale Hapgood described. The evidence for slow, plate tectonic movement over hundreds of millions of years is overwhelming. The frozen mammoths are explained by sudden, localized events like mudflows, not a planetary snap freeze. So where does this leave the Cataclysm theory? It exists in a difficult space, a compelling narrative that lacks the robust, reproducible evidence required by modern Earth science. It is often categorized as pseudoscience, not because the questions are invalid, but because the proposed mechanisms contradict established physical models. Yet, even in dismissing the most extreme claims, we are left with a crucial, legitimate insight. The positions of ancient sites relative to today's geography might indeed be misleading over the long span of human civilization. Gradual changes in the Earth's axial tilt, known as precession, slowly alter the position of the stars over a cycle of 26,000 years. The pole star in the time of the pyramid builders was not Polaris, but a star called Theban. This is a verified astronomical fact. So while a sudden pole shift remains scientifically unsubstantiated, the slower, majestic dance of the heavens absolutely means that the sky our ancestors revered was subtly different from our own. This temporal complexity adds a final, profound dimension to the hidden blueprint. It asks us to consider that these sites may encode not just a snapshot of the cosmos, but a memory of its motion. Perhaps the alignments were designed to mark a specific celestial configuration that was already changing, serving as a permanent record of a moment in cosmic time. Or perhaps, in the most speculative sense, they point to a lost homeland, a legendary place of origin remembered in myth, whose true location was scrambled by the slow turn of the world or the trauma of a real, if less dramatic, disaster. The Cataclysm theory, in its essence, is a metaphor for lost context. It reminds us that the ancient world we study is a ruin not just of stone, but of meaning, and that the blueprint we seek may be written in a language of stars and earth that is continually, slowly being rewritten. Two ancient cities separated by an ocean and over 7,000 miles present a puzzle that has captivated researchers for decades. The Giza Plateau in Egypt and the metropolis of Teotihuacan in Mexico seem to echo one another in a way that feels almost deliberate. By placing their layouts side by side, we confront the hidden blueprint theory with its most direct and astonishing test. The core of the comparison lies in the arrangement of three primary structures at each site. At Giza, we have the pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. At Teotihuacan, the central axis is defined by the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, and the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, also known as the Feathered Serpent. The visual similarity is striking, both sets forming a distinct offset pattern along a dominant ceremonial avenue. Proponents of a deep connection point to specific geometric and celestial correlations. The most famous is the Orion correlation theory for Giza, proposed by authors like Robert Bovell. This theory suggests the three main pyramids are laid out on the ground to mirror the three stars of Orion's belt as they appeared in the sky around 2500 BC. The relative sizes and positions of the pyramids, it is argued, match the brightness and alignment of those stars with uncanny precision. The question then becomes, does Teotihuacan hold a similar celestial map? Some researchers have suggested its main avenue, the Street of the Dead, aligns with the setting of the Pleiades star cluster, which held deep significance in Mesoamerican cosmology. Others have drawn lines between the pyramids to propose they mirror other constellations. The mathematical parallels extend further. Both complexes incorporate the golden ratio and pi in their dimensions. The height of the Pyramid of the Sun bears a relationship to its base perimeter that echoes the proportions found at Giza. Even the angles of the pyramid's slopes fall within a remarkably similar range. To the alternative history community, this is not coincidence, it is evidence. They argue it points to a shared source of architectural and astronomical knowledge, perhaps carried by a lost civilization or disseminated by ancient seafarers who understood a global sacred geometry. The mainstream academic response, however, urges profound caution. Egyptologists like Dr. Mark Lehner, who has spent decades excavating at Giza, acknowledge the geometric sophistication but attribute it to the brilliant, localized development of Egyptian mathematics and royal ideology. They see the Orion correlation as a modern imposition, a pattern recognized in hindsight that the builders themselves may not have intended. Similarly, Mesoamerican archaeologists stress the deeply indigenous roots of Teotihuacan. The city's layout is seen as a reflection of their creation myths and a symbolic representation of their universe, with the Street of the Dead possibly representing a path to the underworld and the pyramids symbolizing sacred mountains. The consensus view is one of independent invention, two powerful, complex societies driven by a universal human desire to build monumental centers that reflected cosmic order, simply arrived at similar solutions. The pyramids are a stable, logical form for reaching toward the heavens. Arranging important structures along a central axis is a natural principle of urban planning for ceremonial focus. The appearance of pi and the golden ratio, they argue, can emerge organically from simple building techniques, like using a rolling wheel to measure a base perimeter. So, is this a transatlantic mirror or a monumental coincidence? This case study forces us to weigh two powerful human impulses: the drive to find connection and the need for rigorous evidence. Perhaps the true lesson lies not in proving a direct link, but in appreciating a deeper truth. It reveals that when human cultures reach a certain peak of spiritual and scientific inquiry, they often turn to the same language of mathematics and astronomy to express their vision of the universe. Whether by shared blueprint or shared inspiration, Giza and Teotihuacan stand as twin testaments to humanity's enduring attempt to build heaven on earth, to make the cosmic order permanent in stone. Deep in the Cambodian jungle, another celestial map is carved into the landscape. The sprawling temple complex of Angkor, a masterpiece of the Khmer Empire, presents a breathtaking new dimension to our hidden blueprint. While Giza may whisper of Orion, Angkor appears to hold a different starry secret, one that shifts our gaze from the sun's path to the fixed, coiling shape of a dragon in the northern sky. This is the extraordinary proposal that Angkor is a terrestrial reflection of the constellation Draco. The idea gained significant attention through the work of researchers who, using computer software to wind back the celestial clock, made a striking observation. When the sky from the time of Angkor's construction in the early 12th century is projected downward, the major temples of the Greater Angkor area seem to mirror the key stars of the Draco constellation with a compelling, if not perfect, correspondence. The Pyramid Temple of Phnom Bakheng sits where the dragon's head would be, while other prominent sites like Precon and Ta Prohm align with stars along its serpentine body. This is not a simple solstice alignment, but a sprawling, multi-point attempt to chart an entire celestial region onto the Earth. To understand why the Khmer might have done this, we must step into their world. The Khmer Empire was a powerhouse of cosmological thought and architectural ambition. Their kings were seen as divine, and building vast temple complexes was an act of religious devotion and political power, meant to create a microcosm of the Hindu universe. Their astronomy was incredibly sophisticated, with temples serving as precise instruments for observation. The central towers of Angkor Wat itself are aligned to the rising sun on the spring equinox, and the entire moat surrounding the complex creates a reflective basin that turns the temple into an island representing the cosmic mountain of Hindu myth, Mount Meru. In this context, mapping Draco onto the landscape becomes a profound theological statement. It is the ultimate expression of as above, so below, the ancient principle that the earth should mirror the heavens. By fixing the dragon constellation in stone, the builders were not just honoring the stars, they were attempting to harness their eternal power, to anchor their kingdom to the permanent, cyclical order of the night sky. Draco, as a circumpolar constellation that never sets in northern latitudes, symbolized constancy and immortality, a fitting template for an empire meant to last forever. This example fundamentally expands the scope of the hidden blueprint. It suggests that ancient cultures may not have been content with merely marking solar events. Some may have embarked on far more ambitious projects, creating full-scale cartographic representations of their heavens. The practice of mirroring specific constellations could have been a global phenomenon, a shared architectural language for different star lore. While the Draco correlation for Angkor is not without its skeptics, who rightly point out that with enough temples and enough stars, some patterns will inevitably emerge, the symbolic fit within Khmer cosmology is deeply resonant. It challenges us to look at other major sites with new eyes. Could the Nazca lines in Peru chart celestial patterns? Might the mound complexes of North America encode star maps we have yet to decipher? Angkor Wat, in its silent stone majesty, pushes our investigation beyond simple alignments and into the realm of celestial cartography. It proposes that our ancestors did not just watch the sky, they sought to recreate it, to build their own permanent, earth-bound version of the cosmos, connecting their destiny irrevocably to the stars above. The stars themselves are not fixed in their eternal dance. Our planet spins with a slow, majestic wobble, like a top beginning to lose its momentum. This gentle sway of Earth's axis, called precession, completes one full cycle every 26,000 years. It is the universe's grandest clock, and its ticking hands are the constellations. Because of precession, the backdrop of stars against which the sun rises on the equinox shifts gradually over centuries. The sun has risen in the constellation Pisces for the last 2 millennia, but it is slowly moving toward Aquarius, giving name to the popular concept of the Age of Aquarius. This astronomical reality introduces a breathtaking possibility. Could ancient monuments be more than calendars for a single year? Could they be time capsules, deliberately set to encode not just the sky of their day, but to mark this immense cosmic cycle? This idea pushes the hidden blueprint into the realm of deep time, suggesting our ancestors may have been chroniclers of celestial epochs. To understand the scale, imagine a builder who sets a stone to perfectly frame the rising of a specific star. That builder knows their great-grandchildren will see the alignment begin to drift, and that thousands of years later, it will be gone entirely, only to return again after a span of time longer than all of recorded history. Building with that knowledge implies an astronomical tradition of staggering patience and continuity. The most famous and controversial application of this idea centers on the Great Sphinx of Giza. Researchers like John Anthony West and Robert Bovell have proposed that the Sphinx, with its leonine body, is not merely a statue of a pharaoh but a celestial marker. They suggest it was designed to gaze directly at the constellation Leo on the spring equinox. Using astronomical software to rewind the sky, they point to a date around 10,500 BCE, when Leo would have risen due east at dawn on that equinox, perfectly aligned with the Sphinx's gaze. This date, far older than mainstream Egyptology accepts for the monument, is presented as evidence of a lost, advanced civilization that understood and recorded the precessional ages. The mainstream scientific response is one of careful separation. Astronomers agree completely on the mechanics of precession. It is a well-understood fact of planetary motion. The speculative leap lies in attributing intentional knowledge of this cycle to ancient cultures. Egyptologists argue there is no textual or archaeological evidence from dynastic Egypt that indicates they understood the 26,000-year cycle. They see the Sphinx as a magnificent but purely terrestrial symbol of royal power facing the rising sun, its form possibly inspired by local limestone formations that resembled a resting lion. The debate highlights the crucial line between hard astronomy and interpretative archaeology. The sky's movements are calculable and true. The meaning ancient people assigned to those movements is where mystery resides. Whether or not the Sphinx marks the age of Leo, the very concept that monuments could serve as precessional timekeepers forces a profound shift in perspective. It asks us to consider that these sites might be anchored to multiple layers of time: the daily solar cycle, the annual seasons, and the millennial drift of the zodiac. If even a fragment of this knowledge was preserved and passed down, perhaps encoded in myth or secret priestly teachings, it represents a core component of a potential global knowledge system, a shared understanding that humanity's place in the cosmos was part of a story too vast to be contained in a single lifetime or even a single civilization. These silent stone sentinels, then, become more than tombs or temples. They become pages in a chronicle of the sky, written in alignments meant to be read by generations yet unborn, a permanent record of humanity's attempt to measure its moment against the turning of the galaxy. A dragon coils across the northern sky, and a feathered serpent descends a pyramid. Across continents and epochs, another thread weaves through our hidden blueprint, one not of stone or star, but of symbol. The serpent, in its countless forms, emerges as a near-universal motif, a shared character in humanity's oldest stories carved into the very landscape. This recurring image points to a non-architectural layer of our mystery, a deep psychological blueprint written in myth. In Mesoamerica, the plumed serpent god Kukulkan, or Quetzalcoatl, was a bringer of knowledge, civilization, and the calendar itself. The famous equinox light show at Chichen Itza, where shadow creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the pyramid, is a breathtaking union of astronomy, architecture, and this powerful symbol. Far across the Atlantic, in the rolling hills of Ohio, the Great Serpent Mound stretches for over a quarter-mile. This massive earthwork, shaped like an undulating snake with a coiled tail and an open mouth, is a monumental sculpture in the earth itself, its purpose still debated but its power undeniable. Journey to Australia, and in the Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, the rainbow serpent is a creator being, shaping the rivers, mountains, and gorges as it moved across the primordial land. In the spiritual traditions of India, Kundalini is visualized as a coiled serpent of spiritual energy resting at the base of the spine, awakening and rising to bring enlightenment. Why does this same figure appear so persistently? The comparative mythologist Joseph Campbell saw in these patterns the work of what he called the monomyth, the shared, archetypal stories that live in the collective human psyche. The serpent, he noted, is a perfect symbol of paradox. It sheds its skin, becoming a sign of rebirth and immortality. It moves without limbs, close to the ground, connecting it to the hidden wisdom of the earth and the underworld. Yet it can also climb, and in its winged or feathered forms, it bridges the earthly and the celestial. This symbolic duality makes it a perfect key for cultures trying to express the connection between the chthonic energies of the planet and the cyclical power of the heavens above. When a culture builds a serpent mound or dedicates a temple to a serpent deity, they are perhaps doing more than honoring a local god. They may be giving form to a deep, intuitive understanding, mapping an internal archetype onto the external world. This shared symbolism suggests that the hidden blueprint is not merely a set of technical instructions for building, but also a symbolic language for understanding. The placement of a monument dedicated to serpent energy might be chosen not just for celestial sightlines, but for a felt sense of the land's own power, a place where those earth energies, whether literal or symbolic, were perceived to be strongest. The universal serpent, then, becomes a clue to the ancient mind. It hints that before the precise measurements and the astronomical calculations, there was a shared vision, a common set of symbols through which diverse cultures interpreted the mystery of existence. When we see the serpent carved in Cambodia, raised in earth in Ohio, or celebrated in story in Australia, we are witnessing different dialects of the same profound language, a testament to the unified imagination of humanity, reaching for meaning in a vast and mysterious world. Stone has a voice we are only just learning to hear. Beyond the silent geometry and celestial alignments, our hidden blueprint may resonate with a frequency felt in the body as much as seen by the eye. This is the world of acoustic archaeology, a field that listens to the past, discovering that many ancient monuments were engineered not just for vision, but for sound. If the stars provided the map and geometry the language, then acoustics might have been the ritual instrument, a technology of vibration used to alter consciousness and commune with the unseen. The evidence emerges from dark, enclosed spaces where sound behaves in extraordinary ways. Take Newgrange in Ireland, a 5,000-year-old passage tomb older than Stonehenge or the pyramids. Its long, narrow corridor and corbelled roof chamber are not merely architectural feats, they are sonic amplifiers. Chanting or drumming within that space creates a powerful, reverberating resonance, a booming echo that seems to emanate from the very stones, potentially designed to accompany rituals of rebirth aligned with the winter solstice sunrise. Even more astonishing is the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni on Malta, a labyrinthine underground temple complex carved from solid limestone around 6,000 years ago. Within its famous oracle chamber, a deep male voice spoken into a small niche can produce a haunting, amplified resonance that vibrates through the entire room, a phenomenon that researchers believe was used by ritual specialists to create a disembodied divine voice. Across the Atlantic, in the Mayan site of Chichen Itza, the stepped pyramid of El Castillo holds another acoustic marvel. A hand clap at its base produces a chirping echo that precisely mimics the call of the sacred Quetzal bird, an intentional auditory symbol woven into the architecture. Acoustic researchers like Dr. Stephen Waller have conducted pioneering experiments, demonstrating how specific frequencies interact with stone geometries to create standing waves, echoes that seem to come from specific directions, and even infrasound, low-frequency vibrations below the threshold of human hearing that can induce feelings of awe, unease, or altered states. The implication is profound. These cultures, separated by oceans, appear to have independently discovered that by shaping stone in certain ways, they could shape human experience. They were mastering a physics of perception, using echo and resonance to blur the line between the physical and spiritual worlds. This shared experimentation points to a universal human intuition about the power of sound. Rhythm and vibration are fundamental to life, from a mother's heartbeat to the rumble of thunder. To harness that power in a sacred space was to tap into a primal force. When a drumbeat echoed through Newgrange or a chant resonated in a Mayan chamber, it was not just a ceremony, it was an active participation in the vibration of the cosmos, a way to synchronize the human spirit with the perceived frequency of creation. This sensory dimension completes our understanding of the blueprint in a deeply human way. It suggests that the ultimate goal of these sites was not merely to observe the heavens, but to experience them, to create an immersive environment where sight, sound, and symbol fused into a single transformative reality. The stones, it seems, were meant to sing, and their song may have been a melody understood by the human psyche across the entire ancient world. The persistent echoes across continents inevitably lead to a single, dramatic question. What if all these similarities point back to one source, a single, brilliant civilization that mastered the world before disappearing beneath the waves? This is the lost civilization hypothesis, the ultimate origin story for our hidden blueprint, where myth and mystery converge. The most famous of these legends is, of course, Atlantis, first described by the Greek philosopher Plato around 360 BC. He wrote of a powerful, technologically advanced island nation beyond the Pillars of Hercules that fell out of favor with the gods and sank into the ocean in a single day and night. Plato presented it as a moral allegory about hubris, but over the centuries his story was taken as historical fact. Explorers and writers have placed Atlantis everywhere from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, suggesting its survivors scattered across the globe, ceding knowledge of pyramid building, astronomy, and sacred geometry to the traumatized survivors of a global cataclysm. A similar concept emerged in the 19th century with Lemuria, a hypothetical lost continent proposed to explain the distribution of lemurs between India and Madagascar, which was later adopted by spiritual thinkers as a pacifist, enlightened homeland. In modern alternative history, these ideas often morph into the concept of a global teacher culture, an advanced society from the last ice age that guided humanity's first steps after a great reset. The appeal is powerful and narrative. It provides a neat, singular answer to the messy, fragmented puzzle of prehistory. Instead of countless cultures slowly and independently discovering complex ideas, one brilliant source explains everything. It turns the hidden blueprint from a pattern into a deliberate curriculum taught by master architects to the rest of the world. Yet when we subject this hypothesis to the lens of archaeology and geology, profound problems arise. Despite over a century of intense searching, no concrete, verifiable evidence of a transcontinental, advanced civilization from the Pleistocene epoch has ever been found. There are no suddenly unified artifact styles, no global layer of ruins, no geological confirmation of a continent-sized landmass sinking in the Atlantic or Pacific within the time frame of human civilization. Mainstream science points to the overwhelming evidence for the independent, though sometimes interconnected, rise of cultures like Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and Mesoamerica, each with its own distinct trajectory and innovations. The logical flaw is equally significant. If such a teacher culture was so advanced, who taught them? The hypothesis simply pushes the mystery of innovation further back in time without solving it. So why does this idea remain so stubbornly captivating century after century? It speaks to a deep human longing. We are pattern-seeking creatures who crave origin stories, especially ones with drama and tragedy. The tale of a glorious fall from a golden age resonates with our myths and our psychology. It also, in a strange way, offers comfort. It suggests that humanity's knowledge is not fragile, that even if a civilization is utterly wiped away, its wisdom can survive, carried by a few to begin the cycle anew. The lost civilization hypothesis, therefore, is less a scientific theory and more a cultural mirror. It reflects our own awe at the accomplishments of the ancient world and our difficulty accepting that such genius could have emerged time and again from the raw material of human curiosity and need. Whether Atlantis ever existed as Plato described it is almost beside the point. Its true power lies in its role as the ultimate symbol, a placeholder for that forgotten chapter we feel must exist, the single source that would make all the scattered pieces of our hidden blueprint finally, beautifully fit together. But the search for a single lost teacher culture overlooks a far more profound possibility. What if the blueprint's true origin lies not in a forgotten island, but within the very architecture of the human mind itself? This is the argument from Independent Invention, a cornerstone of mainstream anthropology that offers a powerful and elegant counterpoint to theories of ancient contact. Its foundation is a concept known as the psychic unity of mankind. At its core, this is the understanding that all humans, regardless of culture or era, share the same fundamental cognitive hardware. We possess identical capacities for observation, pattern recognition, problem solving, and symbolic thought. When disparate groups face the same universal challenges under the same sun and stars, they are likely to arrive at remarkably similar solutions. This is not evidence of a shared blueprint passed down, but of a shared blueprint built in. Consider the most basic human needs that gave rise to monumental architecture. Every agricultural society needed to track the seasons to ensure their survival. Watching the heavens was the most reliable clock available. Is it any wonder that cultures from Britain to Cambodia independently realized that a carefully placed stone could mark the solstice sunrise with precision? They were all solving the same practical puzzle with the same intelligent observation. Similarly, the need to honor ancestors or deities, to create a communal focal point that inspired awe and reinforced social order, is a universal human impulse. The pyramid form is a brilliant answer to this need. It is a stable, imposing structure that draws the eye upward. Building a mountain towards the heavens is a logical symbolic act for any culture that sees the divine residing above. The circle, too, is a shape that emerges naturally from gathering. Enclosing a space for ceremony creates a boundary between the sacred and the profane, a concept that appears independently across the globe. We see this principle of parallel invention far beyond architecture. Agriculture was not discovered once and spread. It emerged independently in at least 7 different regions around the world: the Fertile Crescent, China, Mesoamerica, the Andes, the eastern United States, New Guinea, and West Africa, as different peoples learned to domesticate local plants and animals. The same is true for writing systems. Cuneiform in Mesopotamia, hieroglyphs in Egypt, logographic scripts in China, and Mayan glyphs in Mesoamerica all developed without any evidence of direct inspiration from one another. Each was a unique yet parallel response to the same need: recording language, administering complex societies, and preserving knowledge. These are not minor coincidences. They are monumental testaments to the convergent creativity of humanity. From this perspective, the hidden blueprint we have been tracing is not a map of lost voyages, but a mirror reflecting the innate genius of the human species. The psychic unity argument asks us to shift our awe from the idea of a single super-civilization to the incredible, repeated flowering of human ingenuity. It suggests that when a Khmer king envisioned Angkor Wat and an Egyptian pharaoh commissioned the Great Pyramid, they were not consulting a shared manual, but tapping into the same deep well of human potential, confronting the same majestic cosmos, and expressing their understanding through the universal languages of mathematics, astronomy, and symbolic form. The patterns are not proof of connection, but of a common starting point: the remarkable, creative mind that every human culture possesses. This view does not make the ancient world less mysterious. It makes our shared humanity more extraordinary. High on the arid plains of Bolivia, the Gate of the Sun at Tiwanaku presents a riddle carved in stone. Its central figure, a stern deity holding staffs from which condor-headed rays emanate, is often interpreted as a creator god, possibly Viracocha. For many researchers, this figure is intrinsically linked to a powerful narrative that echoes far beyond the Andes, the story of a great flood. According to local tradition, Viracocha emerged from Lake Titicaca after a period of darkness to bring light and order, but first, he unleashed a deluge to wash away a failed race of giants, creating humanity anew from stone. This is not an isolated tale. It is a single note in a global chorus of flood myths, a shared memory that may form the most profound and emotional layer of our hidden blueprint. From the ancient Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, where the hero Utnapishtim builds a great boat to survive the gods' wrathful waters, to the biblical story of Noah, to the Mayan Popol Vuh describing a resinous flood sent to destroy the wooden people, and across the Pacific in Aboriginal Australian lore of a time when the sea rose to cover the land, the story repeats with uncanny consistency. The question these parallels force upon us is haunting. Could they preserve a faint collective memory of a real, world-altering event? Geologists point to a compelling candidate: the rapid sea level rise at the end of the last ice age. Between roughly 20,000 and 6,000 years ago, as massive glaciers melted, global sea levels rose by over 400 feet, dramatically reshaping coastlines and drowning vast continental shelves where early human populations may have lived. For communities along shores, this would not have been a slow, imperceptible creep, but a relentless, terrifying advance witnessed over generations, a trauma of lost homelands that could easily crystallize into myth. This perspective reframes our monuments in a poignant new light. Could sites like Tiwanaku or Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, or even the Great Pyramids, have been built not just as temples or tombs, but as arks of knowledge, as defiant memorials against oblivion? If a cataclysm had erased a previous chapter, the survivors' greatest imperative would be to ensure their hard-won wisdom, their astronomy, their agriculture, their very stories would not be lost again. What better way to preserve this than to encode it in the most permanent medium imaginable, to build lessons into the landscape itself? The gate of the sun, then, might be more than a calendar or a tribute to a god. It could be a warning, a marker, a testament to survival. The shared flood myth becomes a unifying thread of human experience, a story of resilience passed down through millennia. It suggests that the drive to build enduring monuments may have sprung not only from celestial wonder, but from a deep, collective trauma, a need to create something that would stand firm against the next great wave, whether of water or of forgetting. This layer of the blueprint is written not in angles, but in allegory, a story of loss and renewal that our ancestors felt compelled to tell and to build across the face of the world. The stones themselves hold numbers, a silent arithmetic that predates the philosophers who gave it a name. Long before Pythagoras of Samos was born in the 6th century BCE, the mathematical relationships he would later codify were already being employed by builders across the world. This is not about crediting one culture with a discovery, but about recognizing a universal language of proportion that seems to emerge wherever humans attempt to create lasting, harmonious structures. At its heart is the simple, powerful right-angled triangle and the special sets of whole numbers that define its sides, known as Pythagorean triples. The most famous is 3-4-5, where a triangle with sides measuring 3 units, 4 units, and 5 units will always contain a perfect right angle. This is not abstract theory, it is the world's most reliable builder's square. Evidence suggests this practical knowledge was widespread. A Babylonian clay tablet known as Plimpton 322, dating to around 1800 BC, lists a series of these triples, indicating a sophisticated understanding of these relationships over 1,000 years before Pythagoras. Closer to home, some researchers analyzing the dimensions of Stonehenge propose that its early architects may have used Pythagorean triples in laying out the positions of its stones, using ropes knotted in these specific ratios to ensure perfect right angles for their astronomical sightlines. But the mathematics of harmony goes far beyond ensuring walls are straight. It extends into the realm of sound and aesthetics, into what Pythagoras called the music of the spheres. He discovered that pleasing musical intervals like the perfect fifth or the octave correspond to simple whole number ratios such as 3:2 or 2:1. This profound link between number and beauty, between mathematics and sensory pleasure, appears to have been intuited by ancient builders in stone. They sought proportions that were not just strong, but that felt right to the human spirit. The golden ratio is one expression of this, but so are the harmonic ratios found in the floor plans of temples from Greece to India, where lengths and widths relate to each other like the notes in a chord. This widespread use points to a deep, practical wisdom. You do not need to know the formal proof of a theorem to use it. Generations of masons, through trial and error, would have learned that a triangle with sides in a 3:4:5 ratio never fails to give a true corner. They would have discovered that rooms built with certain proportions feel more stable, more resonant, more sacred. This empirical science, passed down through apprenticeships, could easily have arisen independently wherever monumental architecture was attempted. The presence of these advanced principles, then, presents us with two equally remarkable possibilities. The first is a slow diffusion of a very old, practical toolkit of geometry, passed along trade routes from master builder to master builder. The second is the brilliant, repeated flowering of human observation, where cultures separated by continents all listened to the same music of the universe and found ways to write its notes in stone. Whether shared or independently heard, this mathematics of harmony reveals that the ancient world's greatest monuments were built not just with muscle and faith, but with a quiet, profound understanding of the numerical order that underpins both stability and beauty. The placement of a monument was never an accident of convenience. Before the first stone was laid, the ancient world engaged in a profound and deliberate art, a science of reading the landscape to find the precise spot where heaven and earth were believed to touch. This practice, known broadly as geomancy, asks the fundamental question, why build here and not there? The answer reveals a global tradition of seeing the earth not as inert ground, but as a living, breathing body crisscrossed with lines of vitality. In China, this philosophy crystallized into the system of Feng Shui, meaning wind and water. Its practitioners, known as geomancers, were essential consultants for locating tombs, palaces, and temples. They sought sites with auspicious Kai or life force, often identified by protective mountain ridges behind, open plains in front, and meandering watercourses nearby. The ideal location was a sheltered embrace, a dragon's lair where energy pooled and gathered, ensuring harmony for the living and eternal peace for ancestors. A similar ancient science flourished in India called Vastu Shastra. This Vedic architectural tradition dictates the principles of design and spatial arrangement, governing everything from the orientation of a city to the layout of a single room. Like Feng Shui, Vastu emphasizes alignment with the cardinal directions, the flow of energy, and a deep connection to the natural elements. A temple built according to Vastu is not just a building, it is a conscious participant in the cosmic order, its foundation and form designed to resonate with the underlying structure of the universe. We find this sacred geography echoed across the globe. The Druids of ancient Europe selected their sacred groves and stone circles at locations often marked by natural springs, distinctive hills, or ancient oak trees, places where the veil between worlds was considered thin. Many Native American nations chose sites for ceremonial mounds or villages based on visions, the presence of sacred animals, or the alignment with significant landforms, seeing the entire landscape as a network of spiritual relationships. Despite vast cultural differences, striking commonalities emerge. Proximity to water, a source of life and a symbol of flow, is nearly universal. Alignment with specific mountains or peaks, seen as abodes of gods or ancestors, is another shared theme. The selection of sites on particular geological formations, like magnetic hills or areas with unusual acoustic properties, suggests an intuitive sensitivity to the subtle physics of a place. This shared attention to landscape vitality points to a profound layer of the hidden blueprint. It was not just about what to build, but where to build it. The monuments we study are the focal points of a much larger, intentional system, a sacred geography woven into the very skin of the planet. Ancient cultures worldwide appear to have shared a fundamental belief that the Earth possessed a kind of anatomy, with veins of energy, chakras of power, and nodes of connection. Building a temple or a pyramid was an act of acupuncture on a planetary scale, a way to tap into, stabilize, or honor these perceived currents. This global tradition of geomancy suggests our ancestors did not see themselves as separate from nature, but as active participants within a living, intelligent world. They listened to the land, read its signs, and chose their sacred sites not for convenience, but for conversation, creating a silent, global network of places where the dialogue between humanity and the Earth was meant to echo for eternity. The most provocative answer to our mystery arrives not from a lost continent, but from the stars themselves. This is the ancient astronaut hypothesis, a theory proposing that the hidden blueprint was not devised by human hands alone, but delivered by extraterrestrial visitors in our distant past. Popularized in the late 1960s by authors like Erich von Däniken, this idea interprets the world's myths and monuments as literal evidence of alien contact. It suggests that gods described in ancient texts were actually advanced beings whose technology was so far beyond human understanding it could only be perceived as divine. In this framework, the global similarities in sacred geometry and astronomy are not evidence of shared human genius, but of a shared teacher from another world. Proponents point to specific, puzzling sites as potential proof. The Nazca lines in Peru, vast geoglyphs etched into the desert floor depicting animals and geometric shapes, are sometimes described as ancient runways or landing signals for spacecraft, their full form only visible from high above. The mind-boggling stonework at Puma Punku in Bolivia, where andesite blocks are cut with precision that seems machined, with perfect right angles and intricate interlocking channels, is presented as evidence of technology beyond the capability of Bronze Age cultures. Even the biblical account of Ezekiel's wheel is reinterpreted as a description of a spacecraft. The appeal of this narrative is powerful in its simplicity. It provides a single, technologically advanced source for all the mysteries we have explored. It resolves the discomfort of gaps in the archaeological record by filling them with an external, superior intelligence. For many, it transforms the ancient world from a place of slow, human struggle into a grand, science fiction epic. However, when subjected to rigorous examination by archaeologists and historians, these claims face substantial and methodical debunking. Researchers demonstrate that the Nazca lines, while magnificent, were created using simple surveying techniques with stakes and ropes, and their purpose is deeply rooted in local cosmology and ritual pathways for ceremonial processions, meant for the gods in the sky, not pilots in cockpits. The stonework at Puma Punku, while exceptionally advanced, is now understood through experimental archaeology, which shows how patient artisans using stone tools, sand, and water could achieve such precision through generations of specialized skill. The ancient texts describing gods are analyzed within their full cultural and literary context, revealing complex mythologies about creation and power, not technical manuals misremembered. The scientific community argues that attributing these achievements to aliens does a profound disservice to the ingenuity and capability of our ancestors. It essentially says that ancient humans were incapable of such brilliance on their own, a perspective many find dismissive of our shared human heritage. So why does this theory maintain such a powerful grip on the imagination? It thrives on the very real gaps and genuine wonders that mainstream archaeology continues to investigate. It offers a complete, dramatic story where academia often offers slow, incremental, and sometimes frustratingly incomplete answers. Analyzing this hypothesis serves a crucial purpose in our search for the hidden blueprint. It helps us draw a critical line between sensational speculation and substantive, alternative inquiry. It reminds us that the desire for a simple, external answer is a human impulse, but that the true mystery and the true honor may lie in wrestling with the more complex, awe-inspiring reality, the reality of what human beings, looking up at the same stars and driven by the same profound curiosity, were truly capable of building together. A perfect circle contains a world of meaning. While pyramids reach for the sky and lines chart the earth, the circle embraces, creating a sacred space set apart from the ordinary world. This simple, profound shape appears in sacred architecture across every continent, a testament to its deep, intuitive power. By examining its specific manifestations, we see how a single geometric idea was adapted into unique forms, from the windy moors of Europe to the sun-baked mesas of the American Southwest and the serene landscapes of Asia. The European henge, like Stonehenge or Avebury, is a massive undertaking of earth and stone. Its circular bank and ditch create a clear boundary, an arena for ceremony. Within that space, the arrangement of stones or posts could mark celestial events, but the primary act was the creation of the circle itself, a communal project that physically defined a place of gathering under the open sky. Across the Atlantic, the Native American kiva, particularly among Pueblo peoples, offers a fascinating contrast. Here, the circle goes underground. A kiva is a round, often subterranean chamber used for religious and social gatherings. Entered by a ladder through a hole in the roof, its design symbolizes a connection to the underworld, a place of emergence and rebirth. The circular wall benches the community, focusing all attention inward toward the central fire pit, a symbolic sipapu or portal to the ancestral world. The form fosters intimacy, shared warmth, and acoustic clarity, allowing prayers and stories to resonate within the enclosed space. Traveling to Asia, the Buddhist stupa presents another evolution. Originally burial mounds, stupas evolved into elaborate architectural symbols of enlightenment. Their hemispherical dome, often topped by a spire, represents the Buddha seated in meditation, the cosmos, and the path to nirvana. Devotees do not enter a stupa, they circumambulate it, walking in a clockwise circle around its base. This ritual walking meditation, called pradakshina, physically engages with the form, making the circle a path for spiritual journey. In sub-Saharan Africa, many traditional villages were laid out in a circular pattern. Family huts arranged around a central cattle enclosure or communal meeting space reinforced social cohesion, defense, and a shared focus on the community's heart. The circle here was a blueprint for daily life, integrating the sacred and the social into a single, harmonious layout. Despite their vastly different appearances and uses, these circular structures share a core symbolic vocabulary. The circle represents unity with no beginning and no end. It mirrors the cyclical nature of life, the seasons, and the celestial bodies. It creates a center, an axis mundi, a still point from which order radiates. Functionally, the circle is also remarkably practical for communal gathering. It allows for clear sight lines and equal participation. Acoustically, a circular wall can project sound inward, making a leader's voice or a ritual chant audible to all, a feature evident in both the kiva and the whispering galleries of some stone circles. This global embrace of the circle presents us with a clear choice in interpreting our hidden blueprint. Is this evidence of a shared symbolic language, a fragment of knowledge about sacred geometry that traveled along forgotten routes? Or is it the ultimate argument for the psychic unity of mankind, for a shape so naturally suited to human ritual and social need that it emerged independently wherever people sought to create a place apart? The henge, the kiva, the stupa, and the circular village may not be copies of one another, but they are answers to the same profound human question. How do we build a container for the sacred? Their shared answer, written in earth, stone, and community, suggests that the most powerful blueprint of all might be the one inscribed not on parchment, but in the universal human instinct to come together, face to face, within the endless embrace of a circle. Perhaps the most intimate and universal ruler of all was the human body itself. This brings our search for a common blueprint to a deeply personal scale, from the grand sweep of constellations down to the length of your own arm. Across the ancient world, the foundational units of measurement were not abstract numbers, but living proportions. The Egyptian royal cubit was defined as the length from a man's elbow to the tip of his middle finger, roughly 1.72 feet. In the Vedic traditions of India, the angular, or finger width, was the basic module, with 24 angulars making a cubit. The Roman foot, the Greek pous, the Chinese kaya all were originally derived from parts of the human form. This practice, known as anthropometry, suggests a profound idea. What if the hidden blueprint for these global monuments was not imported from a lost continent, but was carried within every person who walked the earth? The logic is beautifully simple and universally accessible. If you are planning a grand construction project without a standardized factory-made tape measure, what is your most reliable and readily available tool? Your own body. A master builder could use his forearm to measure a stone block, and his apprentices, whose arms were of similar length, could replicate that measure with consistency. Over time, this personal unit would become codified, perhaps based on the arm length of a king or a high priest, becoming the official cubit of the land. This biological origin grounds the mystery of shared measurement in something we all understand. It transforms the search for a universal ancient ruler from a quest for a lost artifact into a recognition of shared human anatomy. The fascinating question then becomes, could different cultures' sacred units, like the Egyptian cubit and the speculative megalithic yard, simply be different expressions of the same human-scaled thinking? Some researchers have explored this by looking at averages. While individual arm lengths vary, the average cubit across a global population tends to fall within a predictable range. Intriguingly, when you scale up from the cubit, which is a personal measure, to a measure perhaps used for pacing out larger ceremonial distances, you might arrive at a unit like the megalithic yard. Could it be derived from a double step or the swing of a pendulum based on average human height? The mathematics here is not about precise global uniformity, but about proportional systems. A temple designed in multiples of the cubit is, in essence, designed in multiples of the human form. This creates architecture that is inherently in harmony with its creators and users. The spaces feel proportionate because they are born from our own proportions. A doorway's height relates to a man's stature, a room's width to the span of his arms, creating an environment that feels intuitively correct. This perspective offers a powerful resolution to part of our mystery. It suggests that the recurring mathematical harmonies in monuments from Egypt to Cambodia may spring from a common source, but that source is not a single teacher culture. It is the shared geometry of the human body, amplified through culture and cosmology. When an Egyptian architect laid out a pyramid using royal cubits and a Mesoamerican priest paced out a temple platform using his own strides, they were both using the same fundamental reference, their own physical being, to translate celestial order into terrestrial form. The blueprint in this light was both everywhere and nowhere. It was written in the very bones of humanity, a silent standard that required no sea crossing to disseminate. Only the universal experience of having a body, 2 arms, and a desire to build something that felt eternally, humanly right. Stone itself could point the way home. Beyond their sacred and symbolic functions, many ancient monuments may have served a profoundly practical purpose. acting as massive, permanent signposts etched into the landscape. This navigational dimension transforms these sites from passive temples into active tools, giant compasses and star charts designed to guide travelers across treacherous seas or trackless lands. The evidence for this exists in both simple artifacts and grand, sprawling complexes. Take the Viking Sun Compass, a wooden disc discovered in Greenland. This ingenious device, used around the year 1000, had a central gnomon that cast a shadow. Markings around its edge allowed a skilled navigator to determine direction even when the sun was obscured by cloud, using the shadow's length and position. It was a portable, personal monument to celestial knowledge. On a far grander scale, the Carnac stone alignments in Brittany, France, present a breathtaking mystery. Thousands of prehistoric standing stones are arranged in parallel rows stretching for miles. While their purpose is debated, one compelling theory suggests they functioned as a giant open-air observatory. The alignments may have been used to track the Moon's complex 18.6-year cycle, a celestial rhythm of immense importance to early maritime cultures for predicting tides and navigating by moonlight. For a sailor departing the coast of Brittany, these stone rows, visible from the sea, could have served as both a calendar and a landmark, a fixed point of reference in a fluid world. This idea of monuments as navigational markers finds its most isolated test on Easter Island. The iconic moai, those brooding stone giants, all originally faced inland, watching over their communities. But their massive stone platforms, the ahu, were built primarily along the coastline. Some researchers propose that the ahu, and perhaps the sight lines between certain statues, served as alignment markers for Polynesian voyagers navigating to and from this most remote of islands. In a vast ocean with no other land in sight, the silhouette of a ranked line of moai against the sky could have been a desperately welcome sign, a man-made mountain confirming a successful voyage. This utilitarian layer adds a crucial dimension to our hidden blueprint. It suggests that the drive to build in stone was not solely spiritual or political. It was also deeply practical, born from the universal human needs to explore, to trade, and to find one's place on an immense planet. If cultures from the North Atlantic to the South Pacific independently raised stones to guide their journeys, it speaks to a shared imperative. The architecture of the sacred and the architecture of survival were often one and the same. A pyramid that marked a solstice also told a farmer when to plant. A stone row that charted the moon also told a sailor when to sail. This perspective weaves the celestial and the terrestrial tightly together. It portrays our ancestors not just as star-gazing priests, but as intrepid engineers and explorers, using the most durable material they knew to write a permanent manual for movement across the earth. A manual whose chapters were written in aligned stones waiting for the right sun, the right moon, or the right sailor to read their meaning. The stone itself was never just a building block. It was a conscious choice, a deliberate selection where geology met theology, and the very substance of a monument became a core part of its message. This hidden blueprint extends beyond design and into the raw materials, revealing how ancient cultures across the world shared a profound reverence for specific stones, attributing to them spiritual power, cosmic significance, and a direct connection to the divine. To understand this, we must listen to what the stones were chosen to say. Consider the monumental effort behind Stonehenge. Its iconic inner circle of blue stones, each weighing several tons, were quarried from the Preseli Hills in Wales, a journey of over 150 miles. This was not a pragmatic decision. Geologists confirm there were ample, closer sources of stone, so why undertake such a Herculean task? Archaeologists point to the blue stone's unique properties. When struck, it rings with a metallic, bell-like tone, suggesting it was chosen for its acoustic qualities, its ability to sing during rituals. More poetically, these stones may have been considered intrinsically sacred, their distant origin part of their mythic power, physically linking the sacred site to a legendary homeland of the ancestors. The material was the magic. This symbolic language of stone echoes globally. In Egypt, the pharaohs chose granite from distant Aswan for their sarcophagi and the hardest core elements of pyramids. Granite, incredibly durable and difficult to work, symbolized eternity and the unyielding power of the king. Its red and black varieties were associated with the fertile black soil of the Nile and the blood of life, turning a tomb into a vessel of rebirth carved from the essence of the land itself. Far to the east, in China and Mesoamerica, jade held a parallel supreme status. More precious than gold to these cultures, jade's toughness and smooth, cool touch made it a symbol of purity, moral integrity, and eternal life. Maya kings were buried with jade masks and beads to ensure their divine rebirth, while Chinese emperors were interred with intricate jade suits to preserve their bodies for eternity. The shared veneration for this particular stone across two hemispheres speaks to a universal human instinct to associate specific, rare materials with the soul and the afterlife. Color, too, was a critical part of this material scripture. The Mughal Emperor Akbar built his short-lived capital, Fatehpur Sikri, from the region's distinctive red sandstone. The warm, glowing hue of the stone was not merely aesthetic. It projected imperial grandeur, solidity, and a connection to the Indian earth. Conversely, many temples across India are built from pure white marble, symbolizing purity and light. In the Andes, the Inca selected stones with specific crystalline inclusions that would catch the light at certain times, making a temple facade shimmer like a constellation at dawn. The choice was an act of alchemy, transforming a physical property into a spiritual experience. This global pattern points to a shared layer of understanding in our hidden blueprint. It was an acknowledgement that the earth provided more than just resources. It offered a palette of meanings: durable granite for permanence, resonant bluestone for ceremony, precious jade for the soul, colored stone for symbolic narrative. The builders were not just architects, they were interpreters of the planet's deep language. They understood that to create a space that truly bridged worlds, you had to start with the right piece of the world, one that already held the story you wanted to tell. When we look at these monuments, we are therefore seeing more than engineering. We are reading a statement of values, a belief system literally set in stone, a testament to the ancient idea that spirit and matter were forever intertwined. A mountain is more than a geological formation, it is a primal symbol of connection. Across countless cultures, a profound myth took root, the idea of a world mountain, a cosmic pillar or axis that stood at the very center of creation, linking the heavens, the earth, and the realms below. This concept, known as the axis mundi, is not merely a story. It is a foundational blueprint that ancient architects sought to make real, building their own sacred mountains from stone to serve as stairways between worlds. This shared impulse to materialize a spiritual geography offers one of the clearest arguments for a universal human imagination. In the flat river plains of ancient Mesopotamia, where no natural mountain reached for the sky, the Sumerians and Babylonians built their own, the ziggurat. These massive stepped pyramids, like the famous Etemenanki dedicated to the god Marduk in Babylon, were not tombs or palaces. They were explicitly described as the foundation of heaven and earth, their tiers like a colossal staircase meant for the gods to descend and for priests to ascend in ritual. The ziggurat was a man-made axis mundi, a focal point where the divine could touch the human city. Half a world away, in the jungles of Cambodia, the Khmer Empire gave the same idea a different name and form. Angkor Wat and the many temple mountains surrounding it were designed as earthly representations of Mount Meru, the mythical five-peaked mountain at the center of the Hindu and Buddhist cosmos, home of the gods. The concentric galleries and moats of Angkor Wat mirror the mythical mountain ranges and oceans that surround Meru. To walk through its gates and ascend its levels was to symbolically journey to the heart of the universe, to stand upon the axis of all reality. In Mesoamerica, the pyramid temples of the Maya and Aztecs served a strikingly parallel purpose. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan or El Castillo at Chichen Itza were not just platforms for ceremony, they were sacred mountains. Their steep stairways, often aligned with celestial events, were paths of ascension. Rituals performed at the summit, high above the mundane world, were acts conducted in a space betwixt earth and sky, a place of communication and sacrifice meant to maintain the cosmic order. Why did this specific architectural form, the artificial mountain, emerge so persistently? The answer lies in the universal human experience of the natural landscape. A real mountain is a place of awe, its peak lost in clouds, its slopes home to unique plants and animals, its height offering a vantage point that makes the world below seem ordered and small. It is a natural temple, a place that feels closer to the divine. When early cultures sought to create a permanent, accessible home for their gods, they looked to the most powerful form they knew and replicated it in the heart of their community. They built their own axis mundi so they would not have to travel to a distant peak, bringing the cosmic center into the social center. This architectural convergence is a cornerstone of our hidden symbolic blueprint. It demonstrates how the psychic unity of mankind, that shared cognitive framework, could translate a nearly identical spiritual concept into monumental form across vast separations of time and space. The Mesopotamian ziggurat, the Cambodian Temple Mountain, and the Mesoamerican pyramid are not copies of one another. They are independent answers to the same profound question. How do we build a place where our world connects to everything else? Their shared answer, rising in stepped stone towards the sun, tells us that the deepest blueprints are not found on maps, but in the shared landscape of the human spirit, a place where everyone, everywhere, looked up at a mountain and saw a ladder to the stars. Even the most solid stone cannot tell us its age with a simple glance. To weave a global narrative, to connect the pyramid builders of Egypt with the temple architects of Cambodia, we must first anchor them all in time. This is where our search for a hidden blueprint confronts its most formidable technical obstacle, the intricate and often contentious science of archaeological dating. If our timeline is wrong, every connection we think we see could be a mirage, an illusion created by placing monuments centuries apart into the same imagined moment. The quest to date the ancient world relies on a toolkit of methods, each with its own strengths and inherent uncertainties. Radiocarbon dating is perhaps the most famous. It measures the decay of a radioactive isotope, carbon-14, which all living things absorb from the atmosphere. When an organism dies, it stops absorbing this isotope, and the existing carbon-14 begins to decay at a known rate. By measuring how much remains in a piece of wood, bone, or charcoal found at a site, scientists can estimate when that organism died. This method revolutionized archaeology, but it is not a perfect clock. It requires careful calibration because the amount of carbon-14 in the atmosphere has fluctuated over millennia. Contamination from later soil or handling can skew results, and the further back in time we go, the wider the range of possible dates becomes. To refine this, scientists use dendrochronology, the study of tree ring patterns. In regions with distinct seasonal growth, like the American Southwest or parts of Europe, trees add one ring per year. The pattern of wide and narrow rings, influenced by climate, creates a unique fingerprint for each period. By overlapping ring sequences from ancient timbers and living trees, researchers can build a master chronology stretching back thousands of years. A piece of wood used in a monument can then be matched to an exact year it was cut down, providing a stunningly precise date. Then there is stratigraphy, the foundational principle of digging deeper to find older layers. The law of superposition is straightforward. In an undisturbed site, the layer on the bottom is older than the layer on top. By carefully excavating and recording the sequence of soil, debris, and construction phases, archaeologists build a relative timeline. A pottery shard from a lower layer must be older than a coin from a layer above it. The challenge arises when we try to link the relative sequence of one site on one continent to the absolute dates from another. These methods used in concert are powerful, yet they are constantly being refined, and sometimes that refinement overturns everything we thought we knew. The most dramatic example is Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey. When first discovered, the massive, T-shaped pillars carved with intricate animals were assumed to be the work of a complex Neolithic society. Initial radiocarbon dates from organic material nestled between the stones delivered a shock. They placed the construction around 9,600 BCE, a staggering 7,000 years before Stonehenge and 6,000 years before the first pyramids of Egypt. This single site, through rigorous dating, shattered the traditional narrative that monument building was a late development in human history, a product of settled agricultural societies. It proved that hunter-gatherers could and did organize to create colossal sacred architecture, forcing a complete rewrite of prehistory. Similarly, new dating at Stonehenge has revealed a much longer, more complex biography than previously understood. What we see today is the final stage of a site that was used and modified for over 1,000 years. The giant sarsen stones were erected around 2,500 BCE, but the first earthworks and bluestone arrangements began 500 years earlier. This elongated timeline complicates simple stories of a single builder or a brief ceremonial phase. For our global blueprint, these chronological shifts are critical. If the core of Göbekli Tepe is over 11,000 years old, could its builders have possessed knowledge that somehow survived, was carried, and inspired later monuments across the world? Or does its extreme age instead prove the opposite, that the impulse to build in stone on a grand scale is so deeply human that it emerged independently at vastly different times? The controversy deepens with sites that are difficult to date directly. The Great Sphinx of Giza, carved from the living bedrock, contains almost no organic material for carbon dating. Its age is estimated from stylistic analysis, erosion patterns, and its geological context relative to the nearby pyramids, leading to fierce debates that range over thousands of years. If one scholar's minority view placing it much older were correct, it would radically alter the map of cultural influence. This is not about fostering mystery for its own sake, but about honoring the scientific process. Archaeology is a discipline of probability, not certainty. Each date is a range, a best estimate based on available evidence that is always subject to revision with new discoveries or improved techniques. This inherent uncertainty is not a weakness, but a cornerstone of responsible inquiry. It demands humility from anyone, whether mainstream scholar or alternative researcher, who proposes a grand unified theory of the ancient past. Before we can confidently draw lines between continents, we must first be sure we are looking at the same page of the cosmic calendar. If our chronological framework is imperfect or incomplete, then the most elegant pattern of connections might simply be a trick of the light, a compelling illusion woven from threads of different eras. To seek the blueprint, we must first learn to read the clock and acknowledge that sometimes the hands are harder to see than we ever imagined. The search for a hidden blueprint is far more than an academic puzzle about the past. It resonates so powerfully today because it touches on deep, modern yearnings, a collective curiosity that thrives in our digital age despite, or perhaps because of, our technological mastery. In a world that often feels fragmented and polarized, the idea of a unified ancient knowledge speaks to a profound desire for connection, a story that weaves humanity into a single, grand tapestry rather than isolated threads. It suggests that beneath our surface differences, we share a much deeper, older kinship, one written in the very geometry of our planet. This narrative challenges the official, sometimes sanitized, timelines we are taught, feeding a healthy suspicion that history holds lost chapters and silenced voices. We live in an era where information is at our fingertips, yet we sense the gaps in the story, the anomalies that do not fit neatly into textbooks. The hidden blueprint gives those anomalies a home, a framework that feels more expansive and wondrous than a simple tale of linear progress. You can see this resonance everywhere in contemporary culture. Best-selling books explore alternative histories, blockbuster documentaries probe archaeological mysteries, and sprawling internet forums are alive with theories connecting Göbekli Tepe to the Sphinx or comparing flood myths across continents. This is not merely escapism. It represents a popular, grassroots form of interdisciplinary thinking, where amateur enthusiasts blend data from astronomy, geology, mythology, and archaeology in ways that traditional academia often hesitates to do. It is a democratization of curiosity, fueled by satellite imagery and global communication, allowing people from all walks of life to become detectives in a planetary mystery. This movement inherently questions institutional authority, not out of mere contrarianism, but from a place of awe and a sense that the established narrative may have underestimated our ancestors. In an age where we depend on fragile digital networks, there is a renewed awe for those who built civilizations to last millennia using only stone, stars, and sheer human ingenuity. Their achievements humble our own, reminding us that true legacy is measured in more than silicon and speed. Ultimately, the blueprint theory acts as a mirror. It reflects our own timeless questions about who we are and where we came from. Are we the pinnacle of a long, slow climb, or are we the heirs to a forgotten wisdom, struggling to remember what was once known? The quest for answers pushes the boundaries of how we define science and story, urging us to see that myth may encode history and that astronomy might be the oldest language of all. It is a search that, regardless of its final conclusions, re-enchants the world, inviting us to look at an old stone circle or a distant pyramid not as a ruin but as a message. And in that act of looking, we are not just solving an ancient mystery, we are answering a modern need to feel part of something vast, interconnected, and profoundly mysterious. A story written in the bedrock of the earth and the light of the stars, waiting for every generation to read it anew. The evidence we have gathered now sits before us, a sprawling collection of celestial alignments, geometric echoes, and shared symbols. To make sense of it all, we must perform a final, honest weighing of the scales. On one side rests the case for cultural diffusion, the idea that knowledge traveled. Its strongest evidence is not the vague similarity of pyramids, but the startlingly specific parallels that feel too intricate to be coincidence. The apparent encoding of the mathematical constants pi and the golden ratio in structures from Giza to Teotihuacan suggests a shared, advanced mathematical doctrine. The transoceanic presence of the sweet potato, with its linguistic link from the Andes to Polynesia, provides a tangible, biological clue of contact. Most compelling are the complex, non-intuitive mythological motifs, like the global flood narrative or the ubiquitous serpent deity symbolizing cosmic duality, which seem to carry a narrative seed that was planted in different soils. These are not simple solutions to universal problems, they are intricate cultural packages that hint at a point of origin. On the opposite scale, the argument for independent invention presents a formidable counterweight. Its foundation is the psychic unity of mankind, the shared cognitive toolkit that allows all humans to observe the same sun, solve the same architectural challenges, and arrive at similar symbolic expressions. A pyramid is a stable way to build tall, a circle is a natural shape for gathering, and aligning a temple to the solstice is a direct response to the most pressing need of an agricultural society to track time. The environmental constraints of stone and gravity mean there are only so many ways to build something that lasts. Furthermore, the archaeological record, in most cases, shows distinct, unbroken cultural sequences for each civilization, with their own unique pottery styles, writing systems, and artistic traditions evolving in place, without the sudden, disruptive influx of foreign technology that widespread contact might imply. Now we apply a principle from science and philosophy, Occam's razor, which suggests the simplest explanation with the fewest assumptions is often preferable. For independent invention, the assumption is simple, human genius repeated. For diffusion, the assumptions multiply, requiring unknown voyages, unproven teacher cultures, and a historical silence that somehow swallowed all evidence of the journey except for the ideas themselves. The burden of proof, therefore, rests heavily on those claiming contact to provide more than pattern recognition, to provide the cultural artifacts, the linguistic links, or the genetic markers that would trace the path of the blueprint. Yet the scales do not settle decisively. The sheer volume and precision of the patterns, from the megalithic yard to the Draco correlation at Angkor, exerts a persistent pull. The simplest explanation is not always the correct one, and human history is full of surprises that defied prior assumptions. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe alone shattered the simple narrative that monument building required settled farming. Perhaps our modern distinction between diffusion and invention is itself too rigid. Could the truth exist in a middle space, a spectrum of interaction? Occasional, extraordinary contact, a storm-blown vessel, a lone voyage of exploration, could have transferred a potent seed idea, a story of a flood or a shape of a pyramid, which then took root in a new culture and grew according to its own genius, blending with local tradition to create something both familiar and utterly unique. This unresolved tension is not a failure of our search, but its most valuable result. The mystery persists because both sides have compelling points. The diffusionist sees a tapestry and seeks the weaver. The independent inventionist sees the same tapestry and marvels that 10,000 separate hands could create such a harmonious pattern without a master plan. To declare one side the outright winner would be to ignore the profound questions raised by the other. This honest stalemate prepares us for a final realization that the enduring power of these ancient sites may lie not in the definitive answer they withhold, but in the eternal conversation they inspire between the land and the sky, between isolation and connection, between the stories we tell about our past and the awe we feel standing before its silent stone questions. These echoes across the ancient world do not demand a single, simple answer. Our journey reveals a tapestry, one woven from threads of celestial observation, geometric intuition, and shared human yearning. The hidden blueprint we have traced is not a set of construction plans, but a chorus of recurring themes, a language spoken in stone by cultures who may never have met, yet who ask the same profound questions of their universe. The true power of this mystery lies not in proving whether knowledge traveled across oceans or sprang independently from the human mind, but in the awe that either possibility inspires. It asks us to reimagine our ancestors not as primitive people, but as brilliant astronomers, engineers, and philosophers. They looked at the same night sky we do, felt the same pull of the seasons, and possessed the same drive to create meaning that would outlast their own lives. Their legacy is this collection of silent sentinels, each one a testament to a deep desire to harmonize human existence with the grand, orderly rhythms of the cosmos. Whether you are drawn to the romance of ancient mariners sharing secrets or the profound truth of humanity's convergent genius, the outcome is the same. We are left standing before wonders that challenge the narrow stories we tell about isolation and progress. These monuments urge us to see the past as a wider, more connected, and more mysterious landscape than we ever learned. So let these stones be an invitation. Let them inspire you to look at the world with fresh eyes, to see the patterns in the landscape, to wonder at the stars, and to question the narratives handed down to us. The greatest gift of this ancient mystery is the curiosity it rekindles in us today. If this exploration of our deep, shared heritage resonated with you, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Consider subscribing for more journeys into the unknown, and never stop questioning the magnificent, enigmatic stories written in stone.